I was thinking this morning about what exactly about Christianity makes Christians walk around calling it true or the truth. We're going to teach the truth to the world. Why do they call it that? Why do they think it's the truth? What makes them, what convinces them that it's true? Because it makes them happy, so it must be true. So it fills a need in their life, or maybe there's a missing place in their heart, and it fills it. So it must be true. Everybody has places in their heart that needs to be filled, and lots of people find things that aren't Christianity that complete them or make them happy. It doesn't make that true. It just makes it a good thing for that person. But to broadcast it as true, and this is what everybody needs, and this is what's going to make everybody happy, that's not true. And you shouldn't call something true unless you go out and actually confirm it, research it, and have something to prove, something to back it up. This is true, and this is why I know it's true. And why all these other religions are not true, but mine is. Christians like to use that word. They like to say we're spreading the truth of the gospel. And why do they think it's the truth? The gospel's constantly changing. I have my Ryrie Study Bible here. This was the new this was back in the 80s. This was the Bible to have. This was a really good Bible. And but it's a book, it's a book. It's got pages. It's been put together by a publishing house. It's been edited. Men have gone through and repeatedly pondered over it, taken things out. To me, the nature of the religion is more evident by what has been taken out of the Holy Book versus what has been kept in. Or at least it needs to be considered as equally important to determine the intent of the founders of the religion. This book, this is all the evidence right here. All the evidence for Jesus, all the evidence for God. This is it. This is all there is. There's nothing outside of this book that shows that a God exists or that a Jesus exists. There is no non-biblical evidence anywhere that shows conclusively that a God exists or that Jesus Christ lived. This is it. This is hearsay. This is stories by people who lived after the events that supposedly happened. I have a friend who writes fantasy fiction, or at least she used to. She might not anymore. Excellent writer, Judith Tarr, highly recommend. She writes fantasy fiction. I'm trying to think of Lord of Two Lands, I think, is one of her books that I think is really good. She's got tons of books, and her older books, at least, are fantasy fiction. Or not fantasy fiction. I'm sorry, that's the wrong term. Historical fantasies. Judy writes about fictional characters, puts them in actual, real time. Real, like she writes about, I can't remember what it's called, but one story that I really, really liked was about Alexander the Great. And it takes place, in Alexandria, and there are characters in the story that actually, the names of these people actually lived. And she has a fictional character in that story who I believe is like a servant. and the servant, and the story's about the servant's relationship with Alexander the Great. And it's a story, it's not true, but it has the element of, it really reads like it could be true, because recognizable, the setting that she uses for the story is true. That place really existed, and Alexander the Great existed. There's evidence for Alexander the Great, and so it reads like actual. This could actually be a true story from history. Well, that's basically what the Bible is. It's stuff that was written. These are stories that were probably talked about or repeated over the campfire, and eventually somebody wrote them down. Legends that went back, whatever, that somebody finally wrote down, and then hearsay. The New Testament is essentially hearsay. It's written by the people who wrote it. Never knew Jesus. They didn't even live in that part of the country, most likely. There were no eyewitnesses. Nobody who lived like what is his name? Philus? I'm sorry. It's morning and I'm not awake yet. Prominent historians who actually lived during Jesus' time never wrote a word about him. There's no non-biblical evidence for Jesus. This is it. What's in this book. And what is in this book is written by anonymous writers who never knew him, and they think that like the oldest one is like maybe 40 years after he died, allegedly died. Anyway, so again, I look at what is missing from the Bible, and what does that tell us about the agenda that was on the minds of the people that put the Bible together. To me, the story of Lilith is a huge, huge key and really needs a lot of attention. The story of Lilith, which is 90, well, I don't want to say percentages because I had that pointed out to me, that if you're going to use percentages, they need to be accurate. You can't just make up a number. Okay, but there's most of the story of Lilith is no longer in the Bible. You do not, I think the name Lilith is mentioned once still in the Bible, and Genesis chapter 1 describes a woman being made out of the dirt at the same time as Adam. That is the only remnant of the story of Lilith's creation in the Bible. They've taken her out, but they did not take out that part for some reason. So, but why would they take out the story of Lilith? Well, interesting. Lilith was made before Eve. Lilith was the original woman. Lilith was, if God actually made people, and if the story of creation is true, Lilith was his original idea, of his divine plan. That was his original idea. Of course, if one is to believe that God knows everything and he knows the future, he knew when he made her that this was all just not going to work out. But he did it anyway because it's part of his plan. So I don't want to go back down that road. But my thought is, why would men not want that in the Bible? Okay, it seems to me that, again, and I've said this before, the agenda to put women under men and make women subservient to men, it seems to be a huge priority in these Abrahamic patriarchal religions. Okay, well, what was Lilith? Lilith was made as an equal to man. She was made from the dust, just like man. She was made in God's image, just like man. She was his equal. She was his partner. And he didn't like it that she wanted to be on top in bed. So the story goes, he didn't like it. She was a dominant female. She wanted to have her equal time on top. And he didn't like it. So, she's been removed from the Bible, and she was replaced by a subservient Eve who was not made in God's image, but was made in man's image. She was made from man, from his rib. Not as his equal, as his helpmate. Anyway, it just seems to me that that story holds in it so many hints to what exactly wrote this. Okay? Human beings are flawed. Human beings don't, unless they are extremely talented writers, they don't really put together outlines and synopsises or whatever when they make a story. I mean, this is written by somebody who didn't think ahead, and it shows. Oh, we have an all-knowing, all-powerful God, and he's going to make, except that he realizes that he needs to flood the world because mankind became so corrupt. Wait a minute. Didn't he know ahead of time that all that would happen? Then why did he do that? Why didn't he just make it right the first time? Or with Lilith, why did he make her if he knew that she wasn't going to work out with Adam? Why not just make the woman the way she needed to be the first time around so that Adam would accept her? Why make mistakes? How can a God make mistakes? Oh, well, he must have had a reason. Or the people who wrote the Bible weren't divine and made mistakes, and it shows in the writing. Does this make any sense? I just feel like if you're going to call something the truth, you really need to have something that gives you that right. And if you're going to call it the truth to little children and lead little children to believe it, I mean, how many generations have we done that? Well, I believe it because my mom and dad believe it. They believe it because their mom and dad believe it, etc., etc., etc. Who is going to stop the cycle and go, wait a minute, but is it true? Has anybody actually looked into that? Or are we just going to assume that, yes, everything has been confirmed to be true? This is true. And everybody needs to know about it because it's true. We're just going to continue to assume that. I mean, now I'm going to lose my voice. Does it not matter if it's really true? Doesn't that bother people? It bothers me. It bothers me. When I was a Christian toward the end of my time as a Christian, it started to really bother me. The little question of, is this really true? Have I put so much time and effort and hope into something all my life without even really facing that question, without really digging into whether or not it's true? Are we really supposed to think that? I mean, have you ever gone out at night and looked up into the night sky and imagine a diver diving into deep water. You're diving into space with your eyes. You're trying to reach as far as you can, see as far away as you can, the tiniest stars, and even just imagining how much space is between those stars. Now, if this is all true, and this God that has been created, if all the Bibles burned, where would God be? That created all of that actually cares about such things as whether or not women talk in church, or women would cover their heads, or show a little skin, or a male ejaculates on the ground. Is a God who created all of that, when you're looking up into space, going to care if you have a bad thought, or if you look with lust upon your neighbor's wife? Is he really going to care? I mean, seriously? You really think that the God who is up there, that you believe in, that created everything, and has his hand in everything, from the furthest flicker that you can see in the night sky, that he's actually caring whether a woman wears gold jewelry in church? So much of the Bible is clearly put together by men. The problem that I had when I was a Christian, trying to figure out if my beliefs were true, how much of this book was written by men and directed by men, and the wishes and whims and agendas of men, and how much of this is actually inspired by the creator of all that space? How much of this is really from this God? And how can you call this true if you're looking through this and you don't know from one verse to the next, is this from God, or is this from God, or is this put here, oh, a woman should not teach or have authority over men? Is that something that a man wrote because it fit his agenda, or it was all about something they wanted to accomplish as far as making women second-class citizens? Anyway, this is getting long and my bird is driving me crazy. I just think that I think I read this actually. If all the Bibles in the world were destroyed, okay, if God were real, if this God, if the Christian God were actually real, and he really inspired this book, and he actually was in the hearts and minds of not just the original writers who wrote the Bible, but every hand that has touched it since. You know, think of all the times that it's been revised and translated and whatever. Did God actually tell some man to take the story of Lilith out? I mean, was that an inspired commandment from God to somebody? You need to take that out. What about the book of Peter? Or I think there's also a book of Thomas. What about all the Gospels that were written that were not accepted for the Bible? Was God in that too? Did he inspire those decisions? Okay, so if every, excuse me again, if every Bible and every religious document pertaining to God were destroyed, completely and utterly destroyed, and you fast forward 500 years, would the same story be written again? Would this God have inspired new people to write the Bible? Would we have the Bible back? Would there be the same kind of stories again? Or would it be a different God? Would it be a different set of circumstances? If it's a true story, and if the God in the Bible is true, it would be the same thing written again. Anyway, I don't know if this video is making sense either. This is also very, very long. I'm just trying to say that if you're going to call something true, you need to be able to show it's true. And if you're going to take a trusting little child and say, "This is true, dear," you need to what you say to your kids is going to decide how those kids are going to go to school and treat other children. You know, I just think it's important to tell children the truth. I don't think it's good to lie. Even if the intentions are good, and even if you don't think you're lying, if you don't know for sure that something is true, and you're telling a child that it's true, that's lying. That isn't true. And you're not being honest. An honest Christian would have to look at that Bible and say, you know, I don't really know. That's honest. You really don't know. And unless you actually try to put together some kind of effort to discover who wrote it, when it was written, why it was written, where it was written. The thing too that keeps bothering me is, did Nazareth actually exist at the time of Jesus? That's another big clue, in my opinion. From what I have read and heard, the city of Nazareth came like a couple centuries after Jesus' alleged death. It's like, what did somebody one day just go, oh, you know what? People are starting to wonder where, you know, Jesus of Nazareth, why there is no Nazareth anywhere. We better build one. You know, so it just seems to me that was like, let's scramble to cover up this glaringly obvious fault in our story. So anyway, I need to go. I don't know if my video has made any sense. I guess what I'm trying to say to Christians is, before you embrace something as true, and before you tell your children is true, and pass and continue the cycle that you had done to you and that your parents had done to them, you know, perpetuating this thing that more and more and more I see turning ugly in the world. We have fundamental Christianity teaching little children that, you know, if God commands you to kill civilizations, you need to do it all the way down to the last whatever infant. Genocidal teachings, that's scary. You know, do we really want to go that way? Is that a direction we want our society to go? Do we really want this fundamental Christianity that seems to cause division and hatred and racial intolerance and just intolerance in general? Is that what we want for our society and for our children? Do we want to raise children on hatred toward other people? You know, Christians are so worried about the Antichrist coming and all this, and to me, the Good News Club and these conservative Christian right, whatever, that if anything is the Antichrist in this world, that's the Antichrist, because it disguises itself as what some people mistake as a good thing, the truth. And it's not. In fact, it's actually a harm. So, okay, 100,000 minutes later, I'm going to end this video. I don't know if anyone's actually watched this long, but I just wish people would take a little effort, put a little effort. I was the same way, and it took me most of my life. It took a lot of bad experiences I had to live through before I realized how important it is to live what is true and actually face what is true, and not just hold to your heart all the things, the wishful thinking and all the things that you wish were true. So anyway, thanks if you've been watching all this. Thank you. Bye.